Hey, Daily Dosers, this is Pastor Larry here again, and we're continuing our look at what the Bible says about judging, the things we should judge, the things we shouldn't judge, and when it's appropriate to judge, how to judge it. Today, I want to talk about the importance of staying in our lane. We've already seen the importance of not being hypocritical, where we judge others for the things we do. We've seen the importance of being gentle when we judge, and we've seen the importance of not confusing our own application and our opinion as if it were somehow the law of God. But the Bible also talks about the importance of staying in our lane, and that's, I've observed, been a very hard thing for us as Jesus followers to do. You see, we live in a world, and always will live in a world, where everyone's not a Jesus follower. And our tendency and temptation sometimes can be to try to make everybody else live like a Christian when we're not living all that much like one ourselves. The Bible has a pattern of how we're to judge. We start with ourselves. Until I've taken care of the log in my own eye, I'm not to worry about the speck in someone else's eye. The next group, when I've done that, is to one another, our fellow believers. We are to judge, to rebuke, to correct, to encourage one another. And then there's that third group, often the group that we go to first, and that is outsiders, those who do not claim to be followers of Jesus. And the Apostle Paul addressed this particular issue in one of his letters to a church in Corinth. It's called 1 Corinthians, it's chapter 5. And in that chapter, he's writing about a problem they were having where they were overlooking the high-handed sin, not the legalism, but the high-handed sin that directly disobeyed God's law that somebody in their church was doing. And he comes along and he says, what are you doing with that, man? You need to get the leaven out of the bread because it's going to spread everywhere. They actually could find yeast back then, not like today. But as he says that to them, he says, whoa, I want to make sure you understand something. I'm talking about taking care of the sin in the camp, not taking care of the sin outside the camp. And here's what he says. I wrote to you in my earlier letter, not to associate with sexually immoral people, but not at all meaning the people of this world who are immoral or greedy or swindlers or idolaters, because in that case, you'd have to leave the world. No, I'm writing now that you must not associate with anyone who claims to be a brother or sister, but is not struggling with, but high-handed, defending and living in sexual immorality, greed, idolatry, slander, a drunkard, or a swindler. Man, don't even eat with such a person. And then he comes back to highlight again, I'm not talking about outsiders. Here's what he says. What business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? Are we not to judge those inside? God will judge those outside. So you expel that wicked person among you now, but you quit judging those outside. Think with me for a moment what would happen if we really took that to heart. Because I find that much of the angst and anger that those who don't know Jesus have towards Christians often is because Christians have tried to make them live like Christians, even though they don't claim to be Christians. And out of that, we get this judgmental kind of reputation. You add to that what Christopher talked about a couple of days ago, when it's done harshly, and it's all the worse. I want to tell you, if someone harshly comes down on you with their rules when you're not a part of their house, you're not very likely to listen to what they have to say. In fact, you're very likely to write them off. In fact, you're very likely to turn the tables on them and do the same thing to them that they've been doing to you. So men and women, church, let's judge and let's judge wisely. But let's make sure we're not only doing it in the right way, we're doing it in the right situations regarding the right people. Stay in our lane, and God will be pleased, and the gospel will be spread.